12:36 on TSN 690. Another edition of NFL Sunday. He is Eric Thomas. I am Matthew Ross. Sean Coleman is on the board. We are here until kickoff for another week of NFL football, followed by the Irish Embassy Habs pregame show as the Canadians will take on the Florida Panthers a little later on. But we have some business to tend to first. Another week of NFL football, Eric, and that means another week of playoff jockeying.
Yeah, and not many left as far as weeks of football are concerned, week 15. So it is coming down to the final couple of weeks of the season. This is a great time of year. We talked about it last week. Want to see the weather be a factor, but I also love these December games because you know everything is on the line. You're going to see a lot of divisional matchups where teams may be on the fringe of things like the Miami Dolphins today against the New England Patriots. You know those teams. You're familiar with them. So this is what I love at the end of the season, seeing it come down to the stretch run, but also seeing the upsets along the line that are going to knock teams out of the playoffs or keep some in.
All right, let's get to some of these games. A lot of injuries to get to as well today. We'll deal with them as we go along here. Let's start in Atlanta, where the 3-10 Falcons will be hosting the 3-10 Redskins. Not often you see a home team that's 3-10 be a sizable favorite, but that's what you have here. A lot of turmoil certainly around the Redskins. Kirk Cousins will start at quarterback for the rest of the year for Washington today. As for Atlanta, the injury front, Tony Gonzalez and Roddy White both will play today. So good news for the Falcons and your hometown team.
Yeah. I don't know how much I'm looking forward to this one because it's been much of the same all season in Atlanta, but you want to see the bounce back at the Georgia Dome. 2-4 for the Falcons is obviously not where they want it to be this season at home, but you expect the bounce back here because the Redskins are 1-5 on the road. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. He's not RG3, but RG3 is not RG3 at this point in the season. So you wonder what's going to happen there, what the dynamic is, and maybe even if we see a Matt Flynn situation, you see Kirk Cousins play well these last couple of weeks of the season, it could get him a starting job somewhere else.
That's a good point. In Jacksonville today, the Jaguars are going to be undermanned. They'll take on the visiting Buffalo Bills. Both teams 4-9 on the year, kind of just playing out the string here. But for the Jaguars today, a no-go for Maurice Jones-Drew. He tested the hamstring this morning on the field. He cannot go. A ditto for their leading receiver, Cecil Short. So the Jaguars offense, which isn't prolific to begin with, is going to struggle today against the Bills.
Yeah, and I expected more from the Bills. A little bit less, obviously, from the Jacksonville Jaguars because they're the Jaguars. But at 4-9 this season, and we talk about it all year long, 1-5 away from home, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars have underperformed this season, to say the least. But you talk about their wins over some convincing teams, Baltimore, Carolina, Miami, and the New York Jets, I think, to a lesser extent. But fact of the matter is that the Buffalo Bills have beaten some good teams. They've also lost to some bad ones, but I expect them to win this game today.
All right, a little bit of controversy today in Cleveland, where the Chicago Bears will start Jay Cutler over Josh McCown. Cutler, of course, coming back from that injury, and he had 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions on the year. Pretty good numbers with a 63% completion percentage. However, going to the bench now, back to the bench, is Josh McCown, 13 touchdowns, 1 interception. So kudos to Mark Trestman for having the you-know-whats to be his own man and make a decision that he thinks will help his team.
Yeah, but Jay Cutler is a starting quarterback, and it's one of those things where I know you look at injuries and you say maybe a guy doesn't come back, and based on McCown's performance, he should get the starting job. But Jay Cutler is a franchise quarterback. Any other city, he'd get the starting nod. So it has to happen here in Chicago, especially given the fact that this team is 7-6. They are working on a playoff spot and trying to edge their way in. So
and a division.
This is pretty much a pick 'em game as well, and I don't see the Cleveland Browns putting up any test against Jay Cutler, who's going to be hungry to get back into that lineup and show that he is the starting quarterback in Chicago.
All right, something to keep in mind in that game. The Bears are 2-4 on the road this season. Meanwhile, Cleveland, despite all of their woes, almost 500 at home, 4-9 on the year, but 3-4 at home. So something to keep an eye on there. As Eric mentioned, it'll be close. In Indianapolis today, the Colts will take on the Texans in a game in which people are thinking, you know what, this is just very predictable. 2-11 the Texans are. Interim head coach in Wade Phillips. I guess he's not going to start Doug Flutie today. Maybe it'll be Rob Johnson. But for the Colts today, Andrew Luck and company, they got to get back on track here. They've won their division, but they're 8-5, and they need to start to play like they did maybe down the stretch last year.
Yeah, and I'm looking at a couple of their losses in terms of the Colts, and 3 stick out to me, and they've happened over the last 5 weeks. 38-8. against St. Louis, 40-11 at Arizona, and also giving up 42 points at Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago. They have to shore things up on the defensive end. We've talked about it. His whole career, basically, Andrew Luck leading his team down the field in the fourth quarter and getting the wins. It can't come down to that. His defense cannot continue to put him in that situation. And I like the fact, we talked about it earlier as well, that this is Houston, a divisional opponent with something to prove. 2 wins on the season. Didn't work out the way that they wanted it to, so they're hungry for an upset here. Obviously, the Colts are already in the playoffs, but on a sour note, you have to go in on a high.
It's going to be interesting to see how this Texans team plays for Wade Phillips, a guy who obviously will be a prospective head coaching candidate. Question is, how will the team react to him? But he's got a lot of injuries to tend to today, obviously, and Ben Tate is active, and so they will have a decent running game. But the question is, how many points can the Colts put up? I mean, they since Reggie Wayne has been out, that Colts offense has never been the same, and we'll find out what they can do today.
Devastating injury.
In Miami today, heck of a matchup here. The Patriots come into town, getting ready to seal up this division, 10-3 against 7-6 Miami. But the Patriots are wounded, to say the least. Kembrell Tompkins out, wide receiver. Aaron Dobson, wide receiver, out. Rob Gronkowski out. A lot of key injuries for the Patriots in this one. However, they do get a bit of a reprieve. They'll get back the tight end. Oh boy, I'm gonna butcher this name. Take a deep breath, Matthew. Michael Hoomanawanui. That's not bad. Tight end, of course. Very versatile, can also play halfback as well. And he's the guy they're going to rely on heavily. They're only going to dress 2 tight ends today, the Patriots. So susceptible certainly to injury there. On the Miami side of things, this is a team, obviously, that still has some playoff aspirations. And you know, they're a team that is only 3-3 at home and actually over 500 on the road. But if you look at the Patriots, 7-0 at home, 3-3 on the road as well. So this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, this is my 1 o'clock matchup that I've got circled. It was the one that we talked about off the top, off air, and for a couple of reasons. Miami Dolphins were my Super Bowl pick to start the season. Things have gone sour there as well, inside the locker room and on the field, but winning 3 of their last 4, I think, helps. It's that stretch in the middle of the season where they drop 5 of 6, a la the San Diego Chargers, that's likely going to keep them out of the playoffs. But when I look at the New England Patriots, I love this team because they know how to win close games. 3 wins in a row by a combined 7 points total. 2 field goals and a 1-point win last week against the Cleveland Browns in a comeback victory. Pats know how to win close, but I expect some dominance today. It should be the best game, in my opinion, for the 1 o'clock slot.
I think so as well. It's NFL Sunday here on TSN 690, the pregame show. Eric Thomas, Matthew Ross with you until the top of the hour. We'll also be back for the halftime show as well. We have 49ers and Buccaneers coming up in about 15 minutes' time. On the other side of things, we have lots more to cover here on the pregame show, including some key injuries to Pro Bowlers. We'll be back.